Hey all, I'm a relatively new rider to TrainerRoad and also a new rider to riding on an indoor trainer. I picked up a Kinetic Rock and Roll 2 from a buddy who was not using it. Great find, by the way. That's one of the most solid trainers in terms of the resistance unit there. Stays the same forever, doesn't like fatigue. They're just solid. They have a really good, the curve is consistent and represents what you experience when you ride out on the road. Solid find. So Kevin says, I fought riding on a trainer or rollers for years and was a staunch outdoor only cyclist. And now I am converted. Instead of riding maybe 2 days a week, I'm on the bike 5 days a week and I love it. Awesome. That's the convenience factor is one of the hugest values. One thing that has really piqued my interest is belly breathing, something I discovered reading Chad's notes on several TrainerRoad rides. I've researched diaphragmatic breathing, and it has been a game changer for me since in the past, I feel like I was always and he says in quotes, chest breather. My question is, can the TR podcast team elaborate on belly breathing and the mechanics of belly breathing and how to condition your body to make this your go-to breathing method? Keep up the great work and be safe. Chad, it's all you.
Okay. So Kevin, a lot of this stems from, I don't know why I'm embarrassed to admit this. I shouldn't be. I was a Pilates instructor for a period of time. And it was actually rather lucrative, and it was a good foot in the door in terms of all the directions I went after that. But a fundamental tenet of Pilates training is on the breathing, and it just opened my eyes to the fact that I wasn't breathing very well, quite simply. And I was already a cyclist, and I was performing reasonably well, nothing exceptional at the time, but it did open my eyes to the fact that, wow, there might be a performance benefit in breathing better than I do or differently, which translated to better, as I found. First off, there are a lot of books. This is a pretty hot topic, has been for the last couple of years. I've read all of them. Well, all the ones that I'm going to list, and I'm sure there are others out there. Breathing for Warriors, the Oxygen Advantage, Breath, the Iceman, and the Wim Hof Method are the 5 that I've read. Something to be taken from all of them for sure, even if it's just how not to do research. And I'm not going to name names, but one of them is deplorable when you go look at the bibliography. It's embarrassing. And then I got to say, for me, I enjoy the books that focus more on effective breathing than the ones that target CO2 tolerance. And that's a personal bias. That's not because there isn't efficacy with that CO2 tolerance, but it's because it is a miserable undertaking. If you've ever tried to improve your CO2 tolerance, the drills they give you are nothing short of torture. And I'm not exaggerating. It's literal torture. It's terrifying, mildly to extremely.
Yeah.
So, and then secondly, let me get out of the way what we're not going to cover today, because these are big topics. When we talk about breathing, it can go a number of directions. This isn't going to be about inspiratory training. It's not going to be about mouth versus nose breathing either. Both of those, however, are good topics, and I would like to dive into them later, but to cover them here today, in addition to everything else we got, it's just too much. They're big topics. So instead, we're going to focus on belly breathing. So first off, 10,000 foot view of what we're talking about here. And this is basically one half of ventilation. And if you remember last week, talked about ventilation is just air movement in and out of the lungs. Okay. Don't need to get any more scientific than that. And we're only talking about half of that, which is the expiration. So exhaling that air out of the lungs. So the purpose of exhaling, by and large, or entirely, is to blow off what is a mildly acidic gas, a byproduct of cellular respiration, carbon dioxide, CO2. And in doing so, we maintain one of the many acid-base balances in our body. And in this case, it's in our blood, and we do it via the lungs. And of course, the brain. The brain's always involved in basically everything. And the brain, in this case, dictates our ventilation rate. So it actually senses CO2 accumulation in the blood, senses that acid-base misbalance, and adjusts either our respiration rate or depth of respiration, or the combination of the two. So as CO2 accumulates in the blood, our acidity rises. The blood acidity rises, which means our pH drops. And our pH is always maintained in a very narrow range. The ventilation rate adjusts to the rate of that accumulation. And so basically, breathing comes down to a couple of things. First, we're blowing off the carbon dioxide, and we're intaking O2. And one is no less important than the other. So you could just view proper breathing as a balancing of carbon dioxide with oxygen. And I'm not talking about an even balance, just balancing those two things in order to maintain a particular pH. Amber, you want to say something here?
Oh, sorry.
So caught up in it, right?
This is riveting.
I know, it's so good.
I just love to settle in for Chad's deep dives. No, this is kind of cool. So one of the things I learned a long time ago is at sea level, because every breath that you're taking in, you're saturating all of your you're saturating 100% with oxygen, because there's plenty of oxygen in the atmosphere, partial pressure and all that. So at sea level, CO2 is the primary determining factor in driving your ventilation rate. But when you get to altitude, when you take a nice deep breath, each inhalation is not actually saturating you with O2, because there's not as much oxygen available. So O2 becomes the limiter, but it's not necessarily going to automatically change your ventilation rate. So one of the things that you can do to help mitigate the, challenging effects of altitude, shall we say, is to consciously breathe a little bit quicker. Like, you don't want to hyperventilate. You don't want to go overboard with this. But if you consciously shift your breathing rate just a little bit more, it can really help to mitigate some of those effects of altitude.
Awesome. Good tip.
Good stuff. Okay, so now let's get on to specifics. So we're talking about belly breathing. So this is a distinction between horizontal and vertical breathing, and different terms for that. Horizontal is also synonymous in this context as diaphragmatic breathing, as you mentioned, and belly breathing, which is the term I use because it's just, I think it's more descriptive than anything. Say diaphragm, people don't necessarily know what you're talking about. You say belly, everyone gets it. And then the other end of that is vertical breathing, which is also termed as apical breathing. And both of those are pretty descriptive, right? Horizontal breathing, outward, apical breathing, upward. So simply, more air passes in and out of the body via diaphragmatic breathing. There's just no two ways about it. And at least half of my goal with all of the belly breathing recommendations and cues that I make in the in-ride text is exposure to this fact. Learn how to breathe fully. Recognize that what you're doing right now may be enough, but it's probably not. You're probably not using your actual breathing muscles to breathe. So as your diaphragm contracts, it rises, and this kind of facilitates the exhale, which is what we're talking about. And then as it relaxes, it falls and it inhales, which can be a pretty passive process. Exhaling, however, and again, what I try to coach with these recommendations is to make that a more active process. So when you belly breathe, the middle, or what's termed the crural portion of your diaphragm descends, and it creates more room in your rib cage. So you effectively get wider in general. And you see evidence of this when you look at all the best cyclists, especially the time trialists. And I key in on time trialists here because when you see the best climbers in the world riding up a hill, it's not as easy to tease out or to see evidence of that belly breathing because they're seated so upright. But when you put a time trialist in aerodynamic position, you can actually see that belly almost fold over their upper legs. I mean, it's really evident, and it's not flattering. We'll get to that. It doesn't look good, but it's absolutely useful and performance enhancing. And up until, well, I can't remember what the name of the documentary on Netflix.
Oh yeah, that was great. The Movistar
for a while. Yeah.
The Movistar documentary. It's fantastic.
Yeah, but within that, Alejandro Valverde at one point is doing like a comparison with another one of the younger riders and showing that he has tremendous range of motion and force capabilities with his diaphragm in particular. I mean, he goes from completely wide and bloated to gaunt and creepily narrow. And it just shines a light on the fact, I mean, this guy's been doing it for a long time. He rides at the highest level. He's a very capable, competent rider, has won basically everything. But his physiological capabilities aren't just limited to his muscles and his oxygen uptake. Well, you know, in a manner they are, because he breathes ridiculously well. He has tremendous control over those breathing muscles. And what we're really talking about here, at least when it comes to the exhalation portion of ventilation, is if you're familiar with the terms, transverse abdominis, your rectus abdominis, your six pack, and your obliques, both your internal and your external. So these are muscles, and they're not the only ones, but they're largely what facilitate exhaling. And what's interesting here is you can cultivate quite a six pack. I mean, obviously you need to be lean, but in terms of the muscle tissue itself, you can cultivate quite a six pack by simply breathing really well and breathing actively and forcing those exhales. I mean, I rarely do abdominal work, but in my leaner periods of life, it's there because we use them. Well, you know, if you breathe with your belly, you use them, and those muscles do become rather conditioned. So what we're really talking about, or what I'm describing here, is breathing circumferentially. That's really what we're after. And again, it's an unflattering thing. If you have the fortune of a six pack, it goes away. Your trunk looks wide, it looks thick. It's not appealing from the side view.
Yeah, and this is a big reason I think a lot of people don't belly breathe, because they're subconsciously
Totally.
sucking in all the time, and especially when we're wearing spandex, right? People feel a little more self-conscious. Like, it's very revealing stuff. But you got to remember, like, you're there for the performance, not to, look a certain way in your spandex. So I think that's a habit a lot of us unconsciously carry, which can be really counterproductive when it comes to breathing effectively.
And the cool part about this too is that as you get better at it, you will visibly be able to tell, and you can work on it during your workouts. When you're training, and you glance down and look at how you're breathing when you are doing any sort of work interval. And I know I look totally different than I used to. At first, it was all high in my chest and in my shoulders. That's like where my breath would be evident. And it really wasn't getting much. But then after Chad's workout text telling me to belly breathe, now my belly expands. And if I'm wearing a skin suit, I become Santa temporarily, and then it goes back, and that's okay, because Santa's suddenly fast. So who cares? Like, it's a huge, huge difference. And even if you're listening to this right now, you can safely do this. Even if you're driving, start practicing like what we're talking about. And if you do breathe like that, you'll notice you just feel better in a natural state. Even it's just, it allows your body to function more properly. And boy, when you're training, it makes a huge, huge difference. Profound. Like, it really extends like those ventilatory thresholds in terms of not their actual state, but how quickly you reach them. Bad breathing can make you reach them a whole lot earlier. So yeah.
Yeah.
Chad,
so kind of what we're talking about, the other end of that is the whole idea of drawing in and bracing is effectively what you're doing. And it totally has its utility, but in its particular context. I mean, that's typically limited to something where we're trying to reinforce posture because it's bearing some load. We're trying to lift something and we need to brace. And that makes sense. Or we're trying to, in the case of Pilates, you're laying on your back and you're trying to lower your legs to a point without breaking that neutral low back posture. There are things that you can benefit from when you draw in, but they do not translate to proper ventilation. So the sad fact of this is that our diaphragm is both a postural and a breathing muscle. So harken back to the days of being in high school and, running, being forced to survive a mile when you've never run before in your life, or a quarter mile, or that warm up in the morning, all sorts of awful experiences to be tied to PE and
the fitness gram pacer test.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
A great way to make people fall in love with being active.
Yeah.
How far can you reach on the V-sit? That's
exactly.
Your worth as a person.
You're an athlete.
Yeah. We're going to teach you all about humility. Here it comes. Okay. So, but when you do those things and they bury you, right? I mean, you're winded beyond a point that you've probably been winded before. And the compulsion is to rest hands on knees and to recover. And then you have the coaches who at the time, they thought they were doing what was proper, saying, stand up, just walk it out. When in fact, they're asking the muscles that breathe and the muscles that support your posture to work at the same time. So when you lean over on your knees and you can take the burden off your diaphragm as a postural muscle and just let it breathe, there's a real benefit to be gained there. If for no other reason, then it doesn't make you hate working out. So what we're trying to do is exploit the ventilatory cavity to its maximum capacity. And in doing so, this translates to really relaxed abdominal muscles, right? On that at different portions of the inhale, exhale cycle. So it doesn't look good, but it's useful and you need to know how to do it. So apical breathing, when we do that, when we breathe more vertically, we're incorporating or asking the auxiliary muscles to become primary movers in the case of breathing. So we're asking the muscles in the neck and the shoulders to facilitate movement of air in and out of the lungs. That's not what those muscles were designed to do. They might be designed to contribute to that, but they're not designed to drive it. When we breathe diaphragmatically, we're asking the muscles, or we're getting in touch with the breathing muscles and letting them do their jobs. So these are the muscles in the abdomen, in the thorax, the body. Let them do what they're designed to do. Actively task them with that.
Yeah, and how you breathe. So whether you're breathing diaphragmatically or apically, these practices, they have implications for the vagus nerve, which means that they have implications for how you are shifting between parasympathetic and a sympathetic state. So it's just something to be aware of. This is probably, to a whole deep dive on that too. But doing really deep belly breaths has a really restorative, calming effect. That's usually, I think it's mediated primarily through the vagus nerve, but it's really interesting and something that you can experiment with.
It's like an instant vacation. I swear, like start breathing that way and you feel so relaxed. It's so helpful. It's a big thing that really helps. My Garmin watch always reminds me to breathe throughout the day. I have like that reminder and it'll like ping me and it'll run me through like a 30-second breathing exercise or something. And during those times, you can breathe incorrectly and it doesn't do a whole lot. But if you breathe correctly, man, it's truly like it completely makes me feel like I'm rebalanced, so to speak. It's just huge. So this is a really rare topic where we're actually talking about something that you can do off the bike right now while listening to this and see the benefit. I just want to point that out really quick. That's cool. So
in the midst of and after every single deep dive. So
I've been all the time. Ever since Chad brought it up, I was like, oh, this whole segment I've been doing.
Okay, so to close this out, the other half of my reasoning behind incorporating this into the in-ride instructions is to kind of convey that maybe not this directly, but indirectly, is that ventilatory fatigue is real. Those are muscles in there and they do fatigue and they can be conditioned, which is, a topic we're not going to talk about because it is a big one. But if you recall, many podcasts back, we talked about a physiological phenomenon called the metaboreflex, and which is effectively just when metabolic signaling actually restricts physical activity. And one of the reasons this restriction is imposed is because of diaphragmatic fatigue. And I linked to a study that I won't dive into, but if you're interested, go check that out. But within this study, or in line with this idea, is that when we get heavy arms and heavy legs, our extremities are basically underfed due to blood flow prioritization. I mean, it's far more important that we breathe than drive the pedals or, do bench presses, whatever it is. So our breathing muscles are higher on that hierarchy, and that no one needs that explained to them why that is. But when we train the breathing muscles specifically, and we can do it within conditioning, we can also do it outside of conditioning, make it really specific to them. We're training to make them more efficient. And we talk about efficiency a lot. We're just trying to get more bang for our oxygen buck. And this carries to our diaphragm as well. It may be an involuntary muscle, but it is under voluntary control, and it does condition like a lot of other muscles. And then briefly, you asked about how we can make this kind of an automatic thing. Well, the road to automaticity is a long one. I mean, and it's with anything, it requires repetition. It requires consistency. Initially, it requires constant or a conscious effort. And Amber's described that process in great detail to where it becomes less conscious, and eventually there's like 4 stages we move through. But to put it another way, it's practice, 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 right? And that's why you'll see these instructions crop up throughout so many workouts, because even within a single training plan, I might harp on this 8 out of 12 workouts within that training plan, because this is the point that needs to be driven home.
Yeah, this is, I mean, listen to Chad. We all know he's wise. The more you can cultivate a better awareness of your breathing and training, the more automatic it becomes. And we talk about this all the time. The more habitual, like the more good habits you can build, the less cognitive load it will take to do the right things when it comes to race day or your event day. And that's just that is such a huge performance enhancer, is getting into good habits that, just like Chad said, become automatic. And a great example of this is, let's say you're a road racer. I know not everyone listening is, but as an example, if you're in the middle of a road race, I mean, it's intense. You're trying really hard to mentally focus on what's happening in the race, how you need to respond strategically. You're trying to remember to eat. You're trying to position yourself within the field. It's a lot. So if there's a lull in the racing, whether that's because a brake is off the front and the field is content to let it go, or there's a lull between attacks, it's a great time to just remember to take some conscious, deep breaths, just like we've all been doing during this deep dive, to calm your nervous system and reset a little bit, because it'll recharge your focus and your ability to go again when the racing picks up again. And those are amazing habits that if that can just become automatic, I mean, wow, like what a huge advantage right there.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.
If you think I have better hair than Jonathan, give it a thumbs up. If not, leave a comment.
My hair is better than his.